This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The Beijing 2022 Olympic Winter Games officially underway. Chinese President Xi Jinping holds talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Beijing. And West African leaders call for transition period in Burkina Faso and decry spate of military takeovers. Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're tuning in. This is Africa Live only on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Hannah Vivier joins me now with your business headlines.
Thank you so much for that, Mahia. Here's what's coming up in Africa Live Business. Zimbabwe eases forex tax rules to shore up local currency. And Egypt seeks to reduce its budget's overall deficit to below 6% in the 2022-2023 fiscal year. I'll have those stories and more coming up in Africa Live Business, but for now, current affairs with Mahia.
Hannah, thanks for that. Well, the Beijing 2022 Olympic Winter Games have officially begun as Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomed world leaders and athletes at the opening ceremony in the National Stadium. President Xi and the President of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, arrived at the stadium shortly before the start of the opening ceremony. It began with a performance with glowing green stalks to convey the vitality of the season. The Olympic rings then emerged after a cube resembling a block of ice was broken by ice hockey players. That was followed by the traditional Parade of Nations, with each of the 91 delegations preceded by a woman carrying a placard in the shape of a snowflake. Finally, the Olympic cauldron was lit in a most creative way. The Beijing Winter Olympics has gathered the global community with around 2,900 athletes from more than 90 countries and regions, the biggest ever Winter Olympics. Well, CGTN reporter Zheng Yibin tells us more about the spectacular technology and graphics on display as the 24th edition of the Winter Showpiece was declared open.
Well, for the ceremony, the 32 dignitaries and 18 world leaders were present for the opening ceremony, including Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, and heads of international organizations like the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach witnessed the ceremony. With the idea of holding a simple and excellent Winter Olympics, the ceremony did not spend huge costs inviting celebrities to perform. And new technologies are applied this time to present the stunning visual and that kind of effects. The biggest moment during the show is the lighting of the Olympic flame in cauldron. And the lighting itself is the last leg of the 3D Olympic torch relay with the aim to pass on light and hope to people around the world. And from today, Beijing has become the first city of the dual Olympics in the world. Asked the IOC President Thomas Bach yesterday during a press conference that how does he interpret the Olympic new model together? He said that togetherness will be the reflection in Beijing 2022 on the unity of the games and athletes, and many challenges can be solved.
Well, for more on the opening ceremony and the Winter Games, let's now speak to Daniel Wahome, who is the sports editor at the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. He joins me live from Nairobi. Daniel, great to have you back with us. How would you describe the opening ceremony of the Beijing Winter Olympics?
Well, thank you, Mahia. What I would like to describe it as is a celebration of the athlete and the culture of the host nation. The fact that you've got all the athletes, there's that whole thing of unveil the athlete using an ice cube. it brings out the culture of the Winter Olympics. It's something that probably for us in the tropics, winter is 8 degrees, and it hardly snows or there's ice. But at the end of it all, it brings out and celebrates the athletes who made their sacrifices and have gone to compete and represent their nations, 2,900 odd. And also for the host nation, it's the one time that the diversity of the world is brought out in a way that entertains everyone. I may come from Kenya and have, a dance from Kenya that may resonate with Kenya, but if you just tweak it a little bit, then it can capture anyone who's in Kazakhstan, somebody in Chile, somebody in Australia. And that's the whole essence of it. Bring it out, entertain, and deliver the message of the Winter Olympics and what it means to be. The IOC always says this is about inclusivity and diversity. What better way than to show the culture of the Chinese people and bring it out and let the people know a different story about China that they will remember for a very long time, with technology being brought in, simple messaging that sticks forever in your mind. That subliminal memory sticks with you forever. You would not want to forget it.
Right, and Daniel, what positives then can be drawn from the coming together of sport representatives from different countries at this global event in Beijing?
It's always been the one thing that sports brings people together. It is, outside of music, the one equalizer that I know of. You will find people of different walks of life, but the moment they meet and you simply speak, for example, if it's about football and you mentioned a name like Cristiano Ronaldo, then there you have it. And for the people who love ice hockey, for the people who love snowboarding, or you can even talk about skiing, figure skating, it brings out the best in people. I mean, I can use an example of figure skating. You do not have to come from a country that has got it, but that person who's doing, about 8 spins all around on one point on the skates, that's one thing that everyone remembers. It's the beauty of sport that captures everyone. It doesn't have a particular language. It doesn't have any intonation, doesn't have an accent. It only has one thing: movement and a show of human skill that is not, inhibited by boundaries, by politics. It's people who come in, compete. At the end of the day, they all shake their hands and lift each other up. Whoever wins, whoever loses, if there's a draw. That's the beauty of sport. It's a uniting factor. Everyone will forget the politics once the action starts.
And Daniel, let me just jump in here. You did mention the African continent. Not many countries, unfortunately, here are big on winter sports. What does need to be done then to popularize Winter Olympic events here on the continent?
Well, for the African people, they picked up a kind of music from Jamaica, reggae, and I think Jamaica would be the best place for African countries to look out. The Jamaican bobsleigh team from 1988, they inspired a whole movie. And when they went to the Winter Olympics, everyone thought it was a joke. But look at it, it's just forget about the snow. See what sports are there. There are sports that can be played indoors. There's some facilities that are coming up, rinks. You can see young people these days, they're on roller skates. So what if you just try and get the same, because the same skill set required for balancing on the wheels is what you need to balance on the blades, then you could get them to compete in things like that. Kenya has had cross-country skier. Kenya has Sabrina Zimbabwe, who was at the Youth Winter Olympics in 2016, and she was at the last edition of the Senior Winter Olympic Games. So tap into your diaspora. Look at people who are out there. People like Philip Boyd, the cross-country skiers, Sabrina Zimbabwe, who is an alpine skier. Pick them up. Pick inspiration. We all have our way of making our own funny go-karts and roll down the hills. Find out a way of how you can make, the tunnel where you can do your bobsleigh. Look at ways of making those sleighs and the sleds, the sled tunnels. And at the end of the day, it's innovation, and you will get competing. When it comes to ice rinks, they're coming up. I know Kenya has an ice hockey team. So it's how you tap into the diversity and the love for physical activity that is inborn in Africa. People may think doesn't sound structured, but in Africa, we grow up playing in the outdoors. So the physical activities and all of this, if it's figure skating, dancing is in the rhythm is African. I mean, if you give me a song without rhythm, I really won't catch up with it that quick. So
Right.
there's a lot that we can tap from our cultures and convert them into sport and get into winter sports.
And finally, very briefly, Beijing is, of course, the first city to host both the Summer and Winter Olympic Games. What kind of logistics needs to be put in place in a host country, especially in the midst of a global pandemic?
Well, I think the first thing you need is for Beijing, they've got the advantage of hosting the Summer Olympics. So most of the basic facilities were there, the village and all that. So what you need to do next is find out the logistics of making sure that it operates in a bubble format between the sports venues and where the athletes are staying. China has proven that they've got a great capacity when it comes to controlling COVID and things to do with it. So that's a plus for them. And from all the lessons that we've learned from events that are built on a bubble basis is how you keep the athletes safe, how you continue doing the testing without stopping that. Plus also, if there are no fans or there's controlled fans, create that atmosphere. Make everyone feel that they're at home, have that 3D graphic out on the stands, have virtual fans engagement, and at the end of it all, you can do that. China has the capacity, the various venues that were used for the 2008 Olympics can serve as indoor facilities for this. So the management will be there, but the most important thing is, can you keep it in a bubble format? It's just the accommodation, the venue, and the transport in between. How you manage that is so easy. The kind of protocols that China has put in place to put down the coronavirus will be there. And I believe that the games will be a success and the IOC will not regret hosting the Winter Games in Beijing.
Daniel, thank you as always for joining us on the program. Daniel Wahome, sports editor with the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, joining us live there from Nairobi. Well, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has also attended the opening ceremony of the Beijing Winter Olympics. In an exclusive interview with the China media group, Guterres says he's convinced of the event's success as he praises China's campaign of introducing 300 million people to winter sport. He also says he believes such sports events can help bring unity and peace to the world. Well, earlier today, the third and final day of the Beijing Winter Olympics torch relay saw around 101 torchbearers carry the flame on a trip around the Summer Palace. And afterwards, sports scene's Wang Dong talked to one of those torchbearers, Hu Fang, who shared her feelings about the experience and expressed her best wishes for the Games.
Congratulations, Hu Fang, on your becoming one of the participants for the torch relay on the opening ceremony day. For this occasion, you must be honored to participate in this process as one of the torch relay participants.
I feel very proud to be selected as a torchbearer. I prepared for this torch relay for a long time. When I was carrying the torch today, I was thinking that I wish my country could be prosperous forever. The theme of the torch relay is to run towards the city of the future, and our torchbearers are the ambassadors to fulfill this responsibility.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Beijing. Putin arrived early in the day to attend the Olympic opening ceremony. This is the first face-to-face meeting between the two in more than 2 years. Sun Ye has more.
As President Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin finally sat down face-to-face again after more than 2 years. Deals were signed, gifts were exchanged, and China and Russia issued a joint statement on international relations and global sustainable development, calling for the world to stand guard and protect the shared values of the humanity and multilateralism. President Xi said the meeting will inject more vitality into China-Russia relations and that mutual trust will continue to be enhanced between the two countries. President Xi stressed commitment to deepening back-to-back strategic coordination. And the summit has come at a time when relations, in Putin's own words, have reached an unprecedented level and become a model of efficiency, responsibility, and aspiration for the future. A future the president President Xi says would bring real benefits to the people of the two countries.
So this joint statement about how to understand, perceive, and how to implement policies related to this fundamental idea of security from both sides is going to be of significant importance to not only the two countries, but all countries in the world.
And typically, this top-level diplomacy plays a very important role for the Russian-Chinese relations because the relations are, to a significant extent, based on cooperation between major state-run companies on a number of big projects. This time, we also see that they made already declared at least one very important agreement on a new gas pipeline. So it's an important meeting, both economically and politically.
In 2021, bilateral trade volume grew by over 35% to a record of over $140 billion, and the two presidents talked on the phone or via video link 4 times last year. President Putin is among the first head of states to announce attendance for the Winter Games, and the trip comes, in President Putin's words, as Russia-China Comprehensive Strategic Partnership of Coordination enters a new era. And China says it's also ready to work with Russia to deepen the time-honored friendship and comprehensive strategic coordination between the two countries in this new era. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, it's time for a quick break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. West African leaders call for transition period after coup in Burkina Faso and decry the spate of military takeovers. And a South African company uses Moderna data to develop the first mRNA-type vaccine on the continent. Welcome back. Now, leaders of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, have called on the military authorities in Burkina Faso to set up a transition period to return the country to constitutional rule as soon as possible. The regional bloc has also upheld the suspension of Burkina Faso and demanded the release without conditions of ousted President Roch Marc Kabore, who's been detained by the military junta. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
The West African leaders met in Accra to discuss the political situation in Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Mali. ECOWAS says it is worried about the disregard for democratic governance in some member countries.
The resurgence of coups d'etats in our region is a matter of grave concern. This evolution challenges the democratic way of life we have chosen. We need to stand firm to protect democracy and freedom in our region.
The wave of military coups in the West Africa region started in Mali in 2020, followed by Guinea in 2021, and then Burkina Faso in January. A fourth military coup in Guinea-Bissau was thwarted but has left at least 11 killed. President of Guinea-Bissau, Umaru Embalo, who survived an attempted coup a few days ago, did not attend this ECOWAS meeting, but he was represented by a member of his government. ECOWAS says it will deploy a force to Guinea-Bissau to help stabilize the country. The regional bloc has, however, upheld the suspension of Burkina Faso until the country is restored to constitutional rule.
They also requested the immediate release of President Roch Marc Kabore, release without condition. The head of state decided to request the current military authorities to MPSR to very rapidly propose a timetable for the restoration of constitutional order.
Meanwhile, ECOWAS says it will not lift the economic sanctions on Guinea and Mali until a timeline for elections is agreed to return the countries to a civilian government. Analysts say more still needs to be done to prevent military takeovers in the region.
In as much as ECOWAS protocols is against forceful takeover of power by the military, there's also an ECOWAS protocol on good governance that is against misgovernance in all its forms: corruption, disrespect for the rights of the people, manipulation of the constitution so you can extend your rule. Unfortunately, it appears ECOWAS sees absolutely nothing wrong with this.
While ECOWAS says it is concerned about the insecurity fueled by militant groups linked to ISIL within the sub-region, analysts want the regional bloc to seek external support from the international community to deal with the insurgencies effectively. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Now, hunger and famine crises are escalating in several countries in Africa. The AU's Commissioner for Agriculture says China-Africa cooperation in agriculture needs to be strengthened to combat food insecurity on the continent. The Commissioner briefed the media on Thursday at the AU's headquarters in Addis Ababa.
Around 30 to 40 million Africans don't have enough food as a direct result of the COVID-19 pandemic in the past 2 years. This was revealed by the African Union's Commissioner for Agriculture on the sidelines of the organization's 40th ordinary session of its Executive Council. The AU believes that it is necessary to build sustainable and resilient food systems on the continent to reduce vulnerability to future pandemics. The continental body will be leaning on its partnership with China to help support Africa to boost food security.
In general, in terms of our department, we've been, getting support from China, mostly in post-harvest loss, the technique of post-harvest loss. As you know, the continent produces about 40% of our produce is being wasted on the farm due to lack of infrastructure, and that's where China is helping us. We are also looking at the issue of food safety. The foodborne disease is really very rampant in Africa, and the Chinese have a very good experience, so we are doing it. But we are asking China to do more, because they are very good in infrastructure, so we want rural infrastructure.
African leaders believe it's important to learn lessons from China.
China is a strategic partner to the African continent. We work together in many areas, and agriculture being one of them. We feel that is important to continue to do so. In many other countries, there has been Chinese investment, Chinese companies involving in agricultural activities in big scale, and this will be important. Well, we need to learn more in terms of food processing.
At the 8th FOCAC Ministerial Conference, President Xi Jinping promised to undertake 10 poverty reduction and agricultural projects for Africa. African leaders are keen to engage with the Asian giants' agricultural experts to roll out joint programs that will lead to increased food production across the continent. Wilkes Anyabo, CGTN.
South Africa's Afrigen Biologics has used Moderna data to design, develop and produce the first mRNA-type vaccine for COVID-19 on the African continent. The company says the vaccine will be tested in humans before the end of this year. The patent-free version of the shot would be cheaper than the $30 one available on the market. The World Health Organization hired Afrigen last year. It is one of several chosen in a pilot program to help low- and middle-income countries crack the code of COVID vaccines. This would help overcome vaccine inequalities between rich and poor countries. Now, a week after COVAX delivered its billionth dose in Rwanda, UNICEF launched the first ever U-Report challenge, calling on all 13.3 million U-reporters in Africa to help vaccines get to the unvaccinated. Through improving access and confidence in COVID-19 vaccines, the Give It a Shot challenge aims to activate young people in motivating those eligible in their community to get vaccinated through social media platforms. Weekly messages will be sent on U-Report to encourage young people to learn about COVID-19 vaccines. They will be engaged in community actions both online and offline. CGTN's Nick Budimba engaged two young people on what they think about the COVID-19 vaccination drive.
So what do you think about COVID-19 vaccination amongst the youth?
First of all, I think it's really, really low in Kenya because majority of the youths are unemployed. And meaning they don't see a reason to get employed because at this point in time, the government say that if you're employed, you need to be vaccinated. And the employed youths are vaccinated. But if you look at the number of employed and you ratio it to the number of unemployed, the unemployed is more. So majority of the youths are unemployed, thus they don't see the reason to get vaccinated. Two, I also think there's a bit of ignorance among the youth because, I don't know, it's just a mentality that we have that, oh, what's the reason of getting vaccinated? How will it help us? Okay, we got the other vaccines and we never got the actual diseases. So what are the chances of us getting corona? And I'm thinking that's what's making. And also, yeah, peer pressure. Peer pressure. It actually applies a lot. Because if my friend tells me that she's not getting vaccinated, I'm like, okay, she didn't get vaccinated, so I don't see the need to, as much as I wanted to. I'd feel like, okay, because she didn't get vaccinated, I'm also saying I don't see a need to also get vaccinated. And it's becoming a really big problem because people are not identifying corona as the virus that it is, and they're not taking the seriousness of the vaccine.
So what do you think about the whole idea of COVID-19 vaccinations among the young people?
Among the youth, I think I can start for myself because I took a lot of time before I took my vaccine. That's because I really didn't know why, the reason why, in as much as knowing what the COVID-19 does, okay? But then, the moment I went, it was just by my own initiative that I went and took the vaccine. You know, there's a perception of youth thinking like the government wants to curb the fertility rate, you know. And then other friends of mine, there is the effects, okay. Some people, like after hearing what your friends are saying, yeah, saying like, I had this, I didn't wake up like for a whole week, yeah. Other friends like, they had no effect at all. The morning, they just wake up and go to their households. But then for my case, I think I slept the whole 2 days after the vaccine, which actually messed me a lot. I just felt like I shouldn't have gone for the vaccine. I slept for like 2 days, sleeping down, doing nothing. It was really a mess.
Yeah, I think it's really, really wise to get the vaccine because, as I said, prevention is better than cure. And I've seen people dying, and I don't want anyone close to me to die because I got COVID and because it's a communicable disease. My family member got COVID and it became deadly to them. So also because I really love the people around me, I want to protect them. And I also want to protect myself because who doesn't love their life? I love life and I want to live longer. So I think I'd advise anyone to take the vaccine, really.
In its latest report made public this week, the World Health Organization has shed light on the problem of increased waste caused by the coronavirus pandemic. It estimates that 87,000 tons of personal protective equipment and 140 million test kits ordered through the WHO have ended up as waste. The WHO has called for reform and more investments in medical waste management globally to face this environmental and health crisis. Yasser Hakim reports on the situation in Egypt and the efforts to deal with this new crisis.
There are growing concerns in Egypt about handling the country's increasing medical waste. The government has been seeking to find the safest and most efficient ways to deal with the huge pileup of waste since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, such as used syringes, old personal protective equipment kits, and empty vaccine bottles. Health authorities hope to minimize the risk posed by such hazardous waste.
The volume of medical waste in Egypt is about 3.5 million tons, coming out of about 336,000 medical facilities, from hospitals to labs, clinics around the country. In 2020, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi ratified a new law that established a waste management unit to ensure the safe treatment of waste through recycling, for instance, and for medical waste, how to sterilize the dangerous waste and bury it in safe landfills that don't harm the citizens.
A strategy for waste management was set up that includes digitizing the system to monitor the cycle of healthcare waste from the source until its disposal. It also includes training professionals in the field, merging the private sector and civil society in these activities, and establishing 9 new waste transfer stations and 20 sanitary landfills. Member of Parliament Nashwal Sharif has been active in this process.
I submitted a draft plan on waste management after personally researching the successful Chinese experience during my visit to China, how they manage this complicated system, the huge plants and capabilities and technology in this field. My plan focuses on cooperation between China and Egypt so that the transfer of knowledge and technology will greatly benefit our waste management and recycling strategy.
This plan, alongside other initiatives, is expected to be implemented by the government in 2022 to upgrade its capabilities as the North African country continues the fight against the persistent coronavirus pandemic. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, Hannah's back in studio to bring us all the latest in business across the continent. Hannah?
Thanks for that, Mahia. Here's what's coming up in Africa Live Biz. Zimbabwe eases forex tax rules to shore up local currency. And Egypt seeks to reduce its budget overall deficit to below 6% in the 2022-2023 fiscal year.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market, it's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to Africa Live. It's time now for the business news. Zimbabwe has reduced a portion of taxes payable in foreign currency. The decision comes as the Southern African country tries to reduce US dollar demand and stop the rapid devaluation of the local currency. Zimbabwe reintroduced its currency in 2019 after a decade of dollarization. The local currency has weakened from 2.5 against the US dollar when it was reintroduced to current levels of 116 against the dollar on the official market. It trades as low as 240 to the US dollar on the black market. Zimbabwe's economy bounced back in 2021 after years of hyperinflation and erratic policymaking. It's now forecast to grow by 5.5% this year. Well, over in North Africa, Egypt wants to lower its overall budget deficit to below 6.7% by the end of the current fiscal year and to below 6% in the 2022-2023 fiscal year that begins in July. Egypt is aiming for a 5.7% growth in the 2022-2023 fiscal year draft budget. According to the country's finance minister, the government is also targeting to reduce the debt rate to GDP in June of 2022 to less than 90% and less than 85% during the next 3 years. Egypt's economy, buoyed by a strong revival in tourism, is expected to grow by 5.2% in the fiscal year that ends in June of 2022 and by 5.5% in 2022-2023. That's before slowing slightly to grow 5.4% the following year. Well, we're staying in Egypt, and the central bank there left its overnight interest rates unchanged at a meeting of its Monetary Policy Committee on Thursday. This as the apex bank said that it expected much of the economy to expand in the near term and inflation to remain in check. The committee kept the deposit rate at 8.25% and the lending rate at 9.25%. Yasser Hakim has the latest on this report from Cairo.
The Central Bank of Egypt has opted to keep rates unchanged for over a year now, at 9.25% lending rate and 8.5% for deposits. It had gradually cut rates from a high 20% in 2016 down to the current rate in November 2020. In its statement, the central bank felt inflation is at safe levels of around 7%. But experts say there are other factors as well that kept rates on hold.
We do still have the highest real interest rate in the region. Our treasury bonds and our T-bills, they give an interest rate of around 10.5, 11.5. If we remove the inflation, we have a real interest rate between 3 to 4%. Second thing is that the Federal Reserve in the United States signaled that it will not increase interest rates until March. So there is no reason that we be proactive and start increasing interest rates now. We have a stable foreign exchange rate, and that is backed by a foreign reserves.
Though Egypt's real interest rates are one of the highest in the world, some experts say it might be pushed further to counter the US Federal Reserve's expected rate hikes in March.
I believe that in Egypt, we will not rush into increasing rates very fast. We might be increasing it between 0.5% to 1% throughout the year. One of the other reasons that we might be doing that is we do not want to really increase interest rates too much, because that's not business friendly. And the government now, Egypt Vision 2030, is to encourage the private sector.
While upping yields could keep the Egyptian market attractive for bond investors, some analysts warn this step can be detrimental to the economy.
Raising interest rates has a negative effect on the business climate because most of the liquidity in the economy will be deposited into bank certificates. If the interest is low, it will reduce the cost of loans for companies to help them expand. The higher interest rates will not only negatively affect the private sector, but also the public debt cost, which in turn will widen the budget deficit and slow down economic growth.
The Central Bank of Egypt might have kept rates on hold this session, but developments in the US could dictate how the bank will approach its fiscal policy in the next few months. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Well, talking about factors that influence inflation, international oil prices are rising again as economic activity resumes in most parts of the world. Some of the benchmarks jumped to levels last seen in 2014. Higher fuel costs are already feeding into global inflation. In South Africa, rates were raised last week. Fuel prices were also lifted overnight. Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
Motorists queued up at garages to fill up their tanks before fuel prices went up. It's been a tough start to the year for consumers. Fuel prices in South Africa are back at record highs, and it comes just a few days after the Reserve Bank hiked rates.
South African consumers are going to be experiencing fuel prices, but food prices as well are going to increase. Firstly, because of the weather conditions, because they've got to be moved from farm to market, and they need transport to do that. It was not surprising when the Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee last week increased interest rate by 25 basis points. So really, it's going to be tough for South African consumers.
The rand has been performing better against the dollar, but it hasn't been enough to stave off rising oil prices.
The local currency against the US dollar has strengthened over the last couple of weeks, which is obviously encouraging. The problem, of course, is that benefit is outweighed, unfortunately, by the rising oil price, which is touching on margins we haven't seen in the last 7 or 8 years.
South Africans are slowly going back to their places of work, but they will need to pay more for transport in order to get there. International oil prices are ticking up, on the back of improved economic activity. The tensions between Ukraine and Russia are also threatening to push up prices. Some traders expect Brent crude to hit $100 a barrel in the coming months.
Certainly events in Europe and definitely events in the Ukraine as they relate to Russia's production will have an impact on that. What is going to happen in the short term, I think, is very difficult to predict. But certainly, I think it could be a rocky road ahead if those international developments play out in a negative way.
I think for South Africans, it's going to be very, very hard in the short to medium term. Therefore, it calls for households to spend wisely, to save wisely, and really play a much bigger role in the affairs of the country.
The AA has called on the government to review the fuel pricing model. Currently, a third of the fuel price is made up of levies that goes to the government. The finance minister might address this when he delivers the national budget later this month. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, a story that's been gaining a lot of attention when it comes to inflation has been that of turkeys, which rose to a two-decade high of near a whopping 50% in January as a currency crisis decimated people's purchasing power in Turkey and complicated President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's path to re-election. The stronger than expected 48.7% rate followed a year-on-year rise of 36.1% in December, and that's according to Turkey's stats agency. The reading came out just days after Erdogan changed the head of the stats agency for the fourth time since 2019. President Erdogan rejects the idea that inflation should be fought by hiking the main interest rate, which he believes causes prices to grow even higher. The exact opposite of conventional economic thinking. He admitted on Monday that Turks would have to carry the burden of inflation for some time. Well, moving on to Britain, where the Bank of England has decided to increase interest rates at its February meeting amid surging inflation. The BOE lifted its bank rate by 25 basis points to 0.5% as was expected. The decision came on the heels of December's rate hike, marking the first back-to-back borrowing cost increase by the BOE since 2004. The BOE forecast in December that inflation would peak at around 6% in April. But in December alone, prices already jumped by 5.4%, the fastest pace in almost 3 decades. Well, we're going to leave it there for now. I'll be back at the top of the hour with Global Business, and we'll be looking at South Sudanese authorities saying that oil production has plummeted due to the impact of COVID-19 and heavy flooding experienced since 2020. We'll be live in Juba to analyze this and plenty more at the top of the hour. But for now, more news making headlines around the world with Mahia.
Hannah, thank you for that. Well, here's what's still to come on the program. Cancer survivors in Uganda call for more attention to be given to patient welfare.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Now, in Uganda, cancer survivors are pushing local authorities to close what's known as the care gap. They are concerned that some patients are losing the battle to cancer because they cannot afford the high cost of treatment. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga now reports.
Roger Baloja battled cancer for 12 years. He suffered from Burkitt lymphoma, a type of cancer that attacks the lymphatic system. Roger says one day he woke up with a swollen jaw, and his parents, thinking it was toothache, took him to the dentist.
After removing that tooth, and next morning the jaw continued to expand. That's where I started the journey, whereby my father has to look for specialists to see what was going on.
Baloja says he only survived because of early detection and good care.
When cancer is in the area, let's say stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, you are sure that that cancer will be treated, whatever cancer type it might be. The only problem when cancer is being discovered when it is on the stage 4, there is a very, very limited chances of being healed.
Another cancer survivor, John Amanya, says everybody deserves access to high quality and affordable treatment.
Treatment therapies are expensive. How can we reduce that? So we still work to advocate for policies, government policies that can help access best practices and policies.
Cancer treatment drugs over the counter in Uganda are expensive. A course of chemotherapy can cost at least $85, which is simply out of reach for many patients. According to the World Health Organization's official list, there are 36 essential cancer treatments. With support from the American Cancer Society and the Clinton Health Access Initiative, treatment is available for some in Uganda at no cost.
If we can treat breast cancer, we can treat prostate cancer free of charge, and their drugs are available. That means that everything is actually being covered.
However, cancer survivors want the government to do more. They say not all essential drugs are provided at the National Referral Hospital. So as Baloja and other cancer survivors push to close the care gap, they hope the government will step in to help patients who can't afford life-saving treatment. Hilara Isiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
And here's what's coming up on Africa Live Sport. Egyptians celebrate their team's win to reach